But I want to talk about what happened in that war. What happened in that war was that, as most of us know, Hamas was raining rockets on Israel. They were deliberately targeting civilians, we all know. 4.5 million Israelis were in reach of these bombs. The reason there was not a large number of casualties was because of Iron Dome, because the bombs are not so accurate, and because God does miracles for the Jewish people. Because it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. They lobbed, as it says here, 12,500 rockets in 10 years. But over this period of time, I think it was 1,500 or something rockets that were lobbed on Israel. And so what's happening there is that not only are they lobbing the missiles at civilians, but they're lobbing them, they're shooting their missiles from civilian areas. Now when that happens, what should the world say? What should the world's response be when you have an aggressive country, let's say, an aggressive entity that is, without provocation, sending missiles indiscriminately into civilian areas and sending them from civilian areas in order to try to draw a response that will kill their own civilians so that they can create an outcry, a public outcry against Israel. What should be the world's response when that happens? Yeah, they should come out very strongly. What should they say? They should say that is a war crime. Because it is. That is a war crime. That is a double war crime. Did anybody hear people talking about war crimes? No? Was there UN resolutions? Was there UN Security Council debates about the war crimes? No, there was not. There's a third war crime that was going on too. It's astonishing. The third war crime is that Hamas, in its very constitution, stands for the elimination of the Jewish people. That's called genocide, and that is also a war crime. Just calling for that is considered a crime against humanity. I'm talking legal, the international legal codes. So a triple war crime is going on, and nobody's calling a spade a spade. Instead, everybody's telling Israel to what? To have proportional response. Now here's just a picture here. Hamas delivering their targets against Israeli civilians and sending it from right near a few meters from a mosque, a few meters from a playground, a few meters from a gas station and factory, just intentionally trying to draw a response that will create the most damage and most civilian lives lost on their own side because they don't care. And so it's quite an amazing thing, and that's what I'm just trying to focus your attention. It's an absolute amazing thing that the world is quiet against this. And we have to realize that's something really that requires thought, requires consideration. Why is the world quiet in this kind of situation? If Mexico, have you heard this analogy? Everyone for some reason gives it, kind of really relevant here, but for some reason everyone gives the analogy, if Mexico would be sending missiles against the United States of America, what would the United States of America do? And what would the world say? Well, I think there'd be, how many missiles would there be before Mexico gets blown into smithereens? Right? not too many. What's more amazing is that in the face of this, what is the reaction of the world? In the face of this, what is going on? Is the media saying, wow, Israel's unbelievable. Look at that people, war crimes. missiles being launched against them, and they're trying so hard not to hurt civilians. They're the most moral army in the world. What an incredible people these Jewish people are. I didn't see that. Maybe Mexican media was like that. Instead, you get things like this. A general imbalance of media. You have here a picture from Yahoo News, Gaza's children caught in a crossfire. It's a picture not of Gaza children being caught in the crossfire, but rather Jewish children running to escape against Qassams, Sderot and whatnot. So this kind of media distortions were happening on a constant basis. Here's another example where this is brought in the New York Times, a picture of the destruction that the Israeli bombs were causing, indiscriminate destruction, except that they found it's really a file photo from 2009, from 3 years ago. Whoops, we made a mistake. Maybe we shouldn't have bought the propaganda that was coming out of Hamas. Because the Arabs, unfortunately, have learned that there's two kinds of wars that go on in these conflicts. There's a military war and there's a cognitive war. There's a war for public opinion, war for understanding, war for the minds of the world. And they got off to a quick start on this some 30, 40 years ago, and the Jewish people, as smart as we are, got off to a very slow start. I think we're slowly catching up. But they know when there's a war, they're all over it. I don't know how many see pictures of the destruction with the picture of the little toy on it, the little booba, the stuffed animal. And you notice, gosh, this is weird, because why isn't it in the middle of a destruction zone like this, there's a stuffed animal without any dust on it? Because after the dust settled, they came for the photo shoot, put on the stuffed animal, and told the New York Times to come and take pictures. And this happens constantly, a complete orchestrated attack, a cognitive war that's going on that the Jews are very slow on. Here's a great example of it. There's apparently an honest reporting film online that got 500,000 people. This is a picture, an image that was shown all across the world of this poor guy injured by the destructive, cruel, indestructive Israeli shelling of civilian areas unprovoked. And then minutes later, we see Mr. Joe injured, walking away comfortably. It was all staged. It was all staged. So what happens? The BBC, in this case, issues a little apology that comes out the next day. A little apology. The damage is done. It's irrelevant that they corrected it.
They didn't.
They didn't correct it?
No. CNN apologized. BBC said they were right.
Let me introduce, this is Rabbi Ephraim Shor. Rabbi Ephraim Shor, stand up. This is, Ephraim runs Honest Reporting, and he's a great guy. And he's going to be here for Shabbat in the Mexican community, so if you want to spend time with him. So it's amazing. They didn't correct it. That's remarkable. What's the result? The result is we come through wars like this, where there's triple war crimes against Israel, Israel being the most moral army in the world in history of warfare in response, the media slamming Israel all over the place, despite that, and the result, of course, is that Israel is maligned and people start to think more negatively about Jews. Now, I'm concerned, as a rabbi and as a caring Jew, I'm concerned about the fact that the world doesn't like Israel. It doesn't always like the Jewish people. That bothers me. I don't lose too much sleep over it, though. What I do lose sleep over is when Jews lose their sense of Jewish pride because of this. When Jews lose their sense of identity with the Jewish people as a result of this, call a spade, anti-Semitism that's going on in the world. But that's what's happening. The result of all of this strange moral outlook that happens in the world is fundamentally a very subtle form of anti-Semitism. as opposed to these wonderful places with flowers and butterflies and gondolas and soccer balls and green trees, is dark, it's militaristic, it's war zone. And that's why we made the film Israel Inside, because we looked at this research, and the research pointed to very clear directions on how to communicate for Israel, what messages resonate for Israel. So now I'm going to ask you this question, which is the result of all of this. It's actually, the survey was done about Americans, American non-Jews. What percentages were pro-Israel? What percentage were decidedly not pro-Israel? And what percentages were in the middle? So what percentage would you think of American general population was decidedly pro-Israel? 10%, 30%,
Less than 10%.
less than 10%. Okay, the answer is 22%. Not too bad. Not too good. But how many were decidedly pro-Palestinian? 40, 60. It's interesting that you think that. I've gotten that response a lot. Americans don't answer the same way. I understand. I understand. But it's pointing to something very interesting about Mexico. Because really it's only 8%. 8%. So there's a clear, amongst the people who are committed, which is 30%, 22% are pro-Israel. The question is, what about that 70%? Who are those 70% that we need to try to get more involved and supportive of Israel? Is that 70% who are unsure, undecided, ambivalent, still working it out? No. 70%, the definition of that middle category is 70% that don't care. They don't care. And you can understand it, because do you care about a lot of conflicts in the world that have nothing to do with you? Do you, especially if they're complicated. Do you remember the conflict a few years ago about Serbia, and who were they fighting? Serbia, Bosnia, and there was a third one. Right, I can't even pronounce it. Right. Good. How many can pronounce it, let alone understand? What were they fighting about? Who's right? Who are those people? I think one Muslim, one was Christian, I don't know who the third one was, and who was starting. You can't figure it out. I even tried one day to try to get down to the bottom of it and go to CNN and get an in-depth analysis. Just explain to me what's going on. You can't. All you could get was today's headlines of this is what happened. You can't understand the conflict. So most people just don't care. There's fatigue. It's why is it always on the front page? Why is it always talked about? I don't care. And so what we need to do is, the research shows that what we need to do is, there's the statistics. What we need to do is show the human face of Israel. And that's why we made the film Israel Inside. But it also points to the fact that that we need to, what the human face of Israel means, that they need to make a relationship with Israel. That until today, Hasbara for Israel has gone the same way for years, which is what? You stole the land. No, we didn't steal the land. You're using oppressive force. No, we're not using oppressive force. You're not giving the Palestinians enough human rights. Yes, we are. Forget about it. We have to do that. I shouldn't say forget about it. We need to do that. Jews need to know, Americans, Mexicans, everyone needs to know how to answer those kind of situations. But that's not what does it for people, because there's fatigue and because they don't understand that they're not going to untangle it. So what we need to do is rather give them a positive relationship to Israel. The positive relationships comes from connecting on a human level, meeting people, Israelis that they can relate to, seeing humanitarian projects, seeing the values are common, seeing that Israel struggles with these challenges. It's not easy. And yet, despite these challenges, Israel's doing a pretty good job of it. We're not perfect, but we're doing a good job. And so this is what we created, one of our films, and a whole program to deal with this issue. The idea is that in this generation, today, the one that we live in, what's happening is, going back to what I said before about the cognitive war, there are two battles going on in the Jewish world. One is a military battle. The Jews have to be prepared all the time. And the young Israelis have to go into combat. And they have to be prepared to give up their lives for the sake of the Jewish people and Israel. But at the same time, there's this cognitive battle that's happening throughout the world, where we have to win this battle for public opinion because it delegitimizes Israel. What happens when Israel loses this battle is that young Jews lose their desire to be Jewish. So there is a straight line from the anti-Israel pressures that are happening in the world to assimilation. Lack of Jewish pride today comes not only from a bad Jewish education, but from anti-Israel propaganda that they can't answer, that they're not equipped to answer. So in this battle, we need everybody to step up for Israel. Because stepping up for Israel is no longer just something that a few individuals can do. It's something necessary for Jewish identity in this generation. It's a responsibility for all of us to do, but it's also something necessary for Jewish identity and Jewish pride. If everybody doesn't play a role, well, we're just outnumbered and outgunned in this war. But Jews are smart people, so if everybody gets involved with it, we can really make a difference. So we created this program, Jerusalem Online U, to provide 5 hours of education that every Jew should get. Happening today, and this is what I want you to take away from this evening's presentation. What I want you to take away is an understanding that in the context of this world, global, civilizational conflict of civilization, where Israel is acting very moral, and our enemies are acting very immoral and trying to wipe us out. In that conflict, it is a war of Jewish identity. It is a cognitive war that every Jew needs to battle within himself. And we need to be educated, and we need to educate the community. I need you to walk away understanding this. Understanding that this is a battle for the minds and souls of the Jewish people in this generation. And if we don't combat it, if we don't work harder to do a better job educating our next generation, we will get a lot of assimilation. And that's the main issue that really counts. And so I'll give you just another example of how we're trying to use our products, our film products, to make being Jewish a little more interesting, a little more fun, and a little more special for people to relate to.
Hi, and welcome to a new 3-part seminar called Destiny. This seminar came out of a realization I had a number of years ago that there's something incredibly special and unique about Jewish history. Because if you think about it, the story of the Jewish people seems to mirror almost exactly the plot lines of many of the great epic movies of our time, like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars, and so on. What do I mean? Well, if you look at the plot of all of these films, there are points of commonality that almost all of them seem to share. It's a cosmic struggle of good versus evil. The fate of the world is always at stake. There's a little superhero versus a big bad guy. The hero doesn't even want the task necessarily, but he can't escape his destiny, and everything basically depends on him surviving or beating evil. The odds are stacked totally against him because he's up against a rival who is much more powerful. He has a series of encounters with a bad guy that he barely survives. He shouldn't survive at all, but he does. The hero has strength that he doesn't know he has, that all, of course, come out during the story. There's a final cataclysmic showdown of good versus evil, and last but not least, good triumphs and evil is destroyed. And then the movie's over and you go home. What we're going to do today is run through a series of presentations that I've been developing over the years, and we're going to see that as we go through them, we can literally check off every single one of these points as they relate to Jewish history. So what we thought was just fantasy, at the heart of all these epic stories, is actually the reality of human history. And we, the Jewish people, are the protagonists, and each one of us has a unique role to play in Jewish history. Okay, so let's get started with the first presentation called World Perfect.
Against this whole backdrop, and this is the final word, and then I'll open up for questions if you have. Against this backdrop, there was another survey done that evaluated the levels of happiness of people in countries. I don't know where Mexico came out. Does anyone know where Mexico came out? In this study that was done, this was in people also. Low. Israel came out. Do you know? Does anyone know where Mexico was?
Was very low.
Israel came out number 8. Israel came out number 8. That's remarkable. Amongst the countries in the world, given the fact that Israel's under this incredible strain and almost constant warfare, a tiny country in incredible stress, it's a remarkable fact that Israelis are ranked number 8 in happiness. How is that possible? How is it possible, given all that stress and strain and challenges, that Israel's happy? And the answer is because Israelis tend to know that they are doing a very good job in life. They feel good about it. They feel at home, they feel good, they're living a good life, they have good values, they're living a good Jewish life, and they're not really too torn up about the morality of the situation that they're in. They feel good. And I think that's what we need to achieve amongst Jewish people here. Because as I said, there's a straight line from this pressure when people don't feel good about being Jewish, about Israel, there's a straight line to assimilation. What we need to do, all of us as individuals, is to strengthen our own sense of Jewish pride, our sense of how incredible it is to be a part of the Jewish people, to be a part of this story that has been going on for 3,500 years, a continuing epic story of survival and thriving and living for incredibly uplifted values against all odds and changing the world in positive ways and beyond our numbers and beyond any other people's positive impact to civilize the world and to help the world. It's an incredible thing to be part of this nation, to be part of this people. And every Jew needs to feel that it's an incredible merit to be part of it. But to get there, we need to educate. We need to be part of what Asian Mexico is doing. We need to all play a role in it, because it's really, we don't appreciate it, but it's the pressures of the world, some of which came out in extreme form in the recent conflict in Gaza. But it's those pressures of the world that cause it to make it difficult for Jews in the diaspora to feel great about being Jewish. And that's our mission, and I hope that we all participate with the rabbis here. Thank you.
Okay?
Okay.
My question is, if we all know, I think we all agree, that the PR issue, we are losing it, okay? Okay. We all know that the PR wars is being lost. How to understand that the Israeli ambassador in Mexico and the Central Committee for the Jewish community in Mexico have remained completely silent? They haven't made a statement in pro of Israel. I mean, there are individuals trying to do their jobs in Facebook, in blogs, I don't know. I myself was doing that over the last couple of weeks. How to understand that the ones that are supposed to do that are not doing it?
Comment specific to Mexico, because I'm not so familiar. But I can comment in general to this idea that Israel is losing the PR battle, and it seems manifest, it seems obvious that the establishment, the powers that represent the Jewish people are not doing as good a job as they could do. I'm trying to be very diplomatic. I will say that even if it was Beseder, even if it was okay, even if they were doing a decent job, this is the second point, I think that it wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't be enough because fundamentally, as I said, there's anti-Semitism going on. Fundamentally, it's not a fair battle. You see, if we were doing a great job and it's a fair battle, we could win. But if the images are so skewed, then it becomes very difficult. If BBC and CNN, and they're going to take all of the Hamas PR materials that they throw out every time they put that doll on top of the destroyed building, every time they put that they kill their own baby, and then say it was an Israeli killing, and then it gets reported as such. There's very little. It's very hard to win that battle. And that's why I say again, we have to realize there's something actually divine going on in all of this. We have to realize the hand of God in all of this. We have to realize the bigger plan in all of this. And therefore, for the most important thing that we can do is be strong ourselves and make sure other Jews are strong and are not pulled down that tunnel and that hole that will take away their sense of Jewish pride.